Welcome to the match 3 of yield golfing. Today I'm going to be sharing the results between A51 Finance and Gamma strategies match 3. We made 3 custom strategies a month ago on Uniswap V3 Optimism. The 3 pools were ETH SNX, WorldCoin USDC, and WBTC ETH. We are past 1 month and the results are here. And guess what? One of the strategies beat hurdle by 3.8%. So let's dive deep into the analysis and see which strategy performed the best. So before we dive deep into the results of the analysis of match 3, let's take a recap of what yield golfing is all about. Yield golfing is a liquidity analysis performance review experiment and that we conduct between the different ALMs who are integrated on top of the concentrated ALMs like Uniswap. The goal is to see how these ALMs perform against the volatility and which one of them tackles the impermanent loss the most graciously and earns more fees for the LPs. In this experiment, we pit 2 different ALMs neutrally on the similar grounds with the same amount of liquidity and the range specifications. Now we know that, let's talk about the match 3 configurations that we put together for A51 Finance and Gamma strategies. In this experiment, we pitted 3 different strategies. First one was WLD USDC, and the range between between both ALMs was the upper range for WLDC USDC was around 0.62 upper limit against the WLD token, and the lower threshold was 0.57. Note that these spreads are kept same for both the ALMs to make it fair and to see how they both perform under the same condition. Let's move forward towards what are the specifications for the second pool, which is SNX synthetics and VETH. So the upper threshold for SNX VETH is 1,796 SNX against Ether, and the lower range was 1,681 SNX for 1 Ether. So there's that. Let's talk about the WBTC ETH. Now this is one of the pool that has the most potential because it doesn't really get affected by the market as it's a pegged asset. So if both tokens go down, it goes down, and if both tokens go up, the ALMs have to play catch up with the market and be the best one to earn fees for the people. So the upper range for WBTC ETH was 0.04 Ether per WBTC, and the lower range was 0.002 Ether per WBTC. Now that we know the specs, let's talk about the timeline and finally the results of each strategy. Let's talk about first strategy, which is WLD and USDC. We started this experiment on 2nd of October, and right now at the time of making this video, it is 29th of October. And when we deposited the liquidity, we made the target to add liquidity of $100 to both Gamma and liquidity and A51 Finance. So we started with $99.61 of liquidity in A51 Finance, and it took those assets according to the pool ratio that it had currently at that time. In Gamma, when we deposited, it took around $98.31 of liquidity. Now, one thing to understand is that no matter whatever the liquidity dollar value we have for both, we don't compare the performance of liquidity against each other, because that is not fair, and it could not justify, because there could be different ratios of tokens and the market may affect the position based on what ratio of tokens it took. So instead, we compare the individual ALMs with the initial liquidity, and we pit the performance against the hurdle value. So for example, the ratio and the amount of token we deposited in the liquidity was kept held in the wallet, what would be the performance? So we have a metric called liquidity versus hurdle divergence, and we noted each and every entry of daily liquidity value and the hurdle against the market price. So if we talk about first about A51 Finance and related to WLD USDC pool, we see that it started on the same level, and then quickly A51 started outperforming the hurdle value. So at right now at the time of making this video, the initial versus current liquidity divergence, which is basically the difference of the liquidity dollar value in percentage against its initial starting point, it is around 12.43%. Now mind you that it reached to about maximum 19%, but then it went down because the market also went down. So there's that. And then if we take the most important metric, which is the liquidity performance against HODL, and we call it divergence. So at this time right now, it is 3.8% up against the HODL. So in true meanings, A51 definitely beat HODL against its initial position. Let's talk about how Gamma performed. So we started with $98 of HODL value, and the current, at the time of making this video, the current divergence of liquidity against its initial value is around minus 9.45%. So it's pretty low, considering that the reason why it's pretty low is, one of the reasons is that it did a lot of rebalances. Now hence that is the difference between the active and passive rebalancing, and that's where we see what type of mechanisms the ALMs put in place. So if we also see the HODL comparison of liquidity in Gamma strategy, we see that the position is down by minus 21.39%. And essentially, if we look at the value, the liquidity dollar value right now fell down from $98 to $89.02. So around, give or take, $10 of loss. So I was talking about the reason why such decline may happen is that when you are comparing the active and passive liquidity management. In active liquidity management, the goal is to keep the liquidity in range for the most time. Now, when you try to do that, you have to swap the assets constantly, and if you're doing that, and the market is in a crab mode like we have been seeing in the past couple of days, then it inflicts the conversion of impermanent loss to permanent loss, and that is what happened with Gamma. Now, if we compare the rebalancing mechanism of A51 Finance, we can clearly see the one difference it is in A51 Finance is that it trails the updated price and it doesn't swaps the assets to keep it in range. There are pros and cons to this approach as well. The first pro is that definitely is that it doesn't frequently convert the impermanent loss to permanent, because we have two thresholds outside of the main range. So when the market even goes out of range, it lets the market to come back in range. So when it only rebalances it when the price hits the thresholds, and when it rebalances it doesn't swap, it trails it right behind the updated price. So there will still be some conversion of impermanent to permanent loss when the market falls back, but it's not around as much magnitude as if you compare it with active swapping. So clearly Gamma strategies couldn't handle this position, and the position was in loss. Let's talk about the second strategy. The second strategy is ETH and synthetics. Now, this strategy is pretty a close call between Gamma strategy and A51, because we started with $97 for A51, and right now at the time of making the video, the difference between HODL and liquidity for A51 is merely 1.57. So A51 Finance is beating the HODL value by 1.57%. It couldn't do a much better job, but we can see that if you had the assets in your wallet, you would be down by around 1.57%. So it still beat the HODL, but it couldn't beat it by that much of a magnitude like we saw on USDC. And you can also see the chart here, and you see that the whole journey for this particular pool, the HODL and the liquidity value have been head to head with each other. If we talk about the Gamma strategies, its position for this particular pool for synthetics and ETH, it started with $97, and now at the time of making this video, the HODL difference divergence with this liquidity is around minus 0.34%. So we can see that the liquidity has started going down against HODL, and if it keeps rebalancing it the way it is doing right now frequently, we are pretty sure that it will get more loss as compared to the HODL. So that is a condition, and I don't see much difference right now for SNX pool between A51 and Gamma, but in the long term, I can predict that frequent swaps may put Gamma again under the bridge for that. So okay, let's move forward with WBTC and ETH. Now, to analyze WBTC and ETH pool, you have to expect that there will be pretty small divergence, and there will be a very close call with hodl, and that's what we saw with A51 and Gamma strategies. In A51, for this particular strategy, we started with $99 of liquidity. The final divergence between the initial and the final liquidity is around 17%. So that's good, because the dollar value of liquidity in this pool for A51 is around $116. So it still earned fees, it compounded the fees. So the position is in overall up from its initial position. But if you compare it with the hodl value, so against the hodl value, it's beating hodl by merely 0.20%. So if you had the assets in the same composition in your wallet, you would be only 0.20% down. So it's still again a close call between the liquidity provision and hodl. But here you can see that even though the difference is not much, but it could be much worse, because if you had provided liquidity manually, you would be down bad. And if you had provided liquidity with other ALMs who would do massive active swapping, you would be in loss. And that's what we see with Gamma as well. So let's move towards to the numbers that Gamma presented for this particular strategy. So we started with $99 of hodl value, initial value. And at the time of making this video, the final liquidity dollar value right now in the position is $113.16. And if you had held the assets in your wallet, you would be having $116.86 of hodl value. So that is minus 3.17% of loss against hodl. And if you also then consider the liquidity, the divergence from current liquidity initial, it's in 13.96, but it could have been much better if there was no such active swapping and frequent rebalances for it. So overall, if we see, you can clearly identify that in this match, all of the three strategies had different sort of performance for both the ALMs. If we only talk about WLD USDC, A51 Finance really did great with respect to the compounding, with respect to how it handled the volatility. As you can see in the chart, the volatility had been massive with WLD token, but it still took the beating and is still above the hodl value. Versus if you compare the Gamma strategies rebalancing and the divergence, the chart shows itself that it had completely fallen off after around maybe 10th of October, and then it keep going down and down again. The position is down bad. It's facing the loss of around 21% against the hodl value. So Gamma strategies clearly didn't perform in this particular pair. But if we set this particular strategy aside, if we look at SNX, ETH and WBTC, we can see that both ALMs are competing head to head. Initially, Gamma was doing good, fairly good when in the WBTC ETH pair, but then again the rebalancing caught up, and with the market moving up and down, it's now going down. And as we will keep this experiment going on, we won't shut down these positions. We will also be able to see how it performs over the period of, let's say, 2 months, and then we will know that either any of these ALMs can survive the long-term liquidity provision and still put the users ahead of their hodling plan. So This is the complete analysis. The sheets will be public for all of you to look at and verify the numbers. And this is the conclusion of the match 3 between A51 Finance and Gamma strategy for the 3 pools. Gamma strategies and A51 did pretty well in against each other in 2 of the pools, which is WBTC and SNX. But clearly, A51 Finance won by a margin in the WorldCoin USDC pair. So thank you so much. That is the analysis. Stay tuned for the next particular match. So this is the conclusion of match 3 in yield golfing between A51 Finance and Gamma strategies. Stay tuned for further analysis on Twitter, and we will be coming back with the match 4 between A51 Finance and other different ALMs. In the next match, we will be trying to pit multiple ALMs against each other in an experiment and see how the different ALMs perform against each other when they are put in under the same conditions. Until then, stay tuned. Bye bye.